My name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we have a big episode today. We are going to start the theory section of the book Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We'll be moving away from the history portion. And more importantly, as we go through my magical journey over at the Occult Technician on Instagram, we're really going to be tapping into a few things during this theory portion. And the first thing that we're going to be looking at is during this theory portion, this segment of the book, we're going to start looking at some of the rituals and the ceremonies that I was doing really around the year 2022 leading into 2023 when I was really deep into the magical practice, right? And what we're going to see is some of those early rituals, some of those early ceremonies that I was doing. They were full of emotion. They were very raw. And the important part is that these were the rituals and ceremonies which resulted in major changes and transformations in my life later on. It took a year and a half for those rituals, those ceremonies to bear fruit. And so we're going to kind of lay that foundation in this portion of the Mind War podcast, this series on magic, as we go through the theory part. And then when we get into the practice side, we'll kind of see the results of the work that I did early on in my magical practices. And then secondly, today, when we get to the second half of today's episode, when again we are going through my magical journey over on Instagram at the Occult Technician, we're going to look at a few very important posts. This was again in the summer of 2022, and there was some real revelations that came in a very short time, some practical practice of the techniques that we've learned before, and then putting them into actual practice. So we have a big day, a big episode for us. So we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. If I can find the page here. Okay, so the theory section begins on page 55. I read through this real quick last night as I was looking over my notes. The beginning is a little complicated, a lot of big words here, but we're going to get through it. And then this section really gets into the meat and potatoes here. So let's start with page 55, Theory, from the book Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And he says this: while we present in the following a theory of magic, nothing will be further from our mind than to simply explain the phenomena away and portray everything as completely natural. On the contrary, we want to show that the whole addiction to naturalness is a serious misunderstanding of nature. That at the bottom of nature, something tremendously unnatural is sleeping. And that very intellectual understanding only leads to the insight that the essence of things is beyond all intellect. That doesn't mean we should give up when we face problems, when our human insight is out of its depth, but it signifies an advance of the intellect up to a point where it neutralizes itself. And it also signifies the apparently paradoxical fact of rationally explaining an irrational world aspect. Okay, that was a big paragraph, sort of confusing, but when I break it down, I kind of think of it like this. When science takes over too deeply, and we learn maybe too much, not that we really can. Knowledge is very important. It's important to keep diving deeper and deeper into science, but we also have to be careful that we don't go so far with science that we remove kind of the humanity of life, and we start to just view life as chemical reactions and growth and decay and those type of things. We have to understand that there is still a spiritualness to all living things, and there is still a magical layer that runs everything. We don't want to give up on that magic, right? We don't want to be so sterile in our thinking that life in some ways becomes meaningless. We have to be careful about that. We go on here with the next paragraph. European rationalism from the beginning should have gone another way, if the rationalism would have been consequential, but it always only went so far as the common, that is to say the average sense permitted. Even the flight attempts by Kant, K-A-N-T, a man who I think tried flying, which were carried out with a tremendous apparatus, landed after some transcendental parades in the harbor of Philistinism. Then came the 19th century with its so-called natural science, but which was never, except for the recent past, radical enough to surpass itself. As a pseudo-scientific monstrosity, its underlying worldview dominated the masses, to then make way for a mediocre popular occultism based on a liberal Protestant foundation from which we still suffer today. Okay, so we have this pseudo-scientific monstrosity called rationalism. Again, rationalism and common sense is very important. I think in a lot of ways that's kind of what we base the idea of extreme centrism. If we were going to create a new political party today, we could call ourselves extreme centrists, where common sense rules all, where we can put down the fairy tales and any of these just very chaotic ways of repairing things the way that we do today. Oh, you got problems with money? Well, let's just create 900 new ways to make a loan or get new interest or whatever it is, and make things more and more complicated, just adding more complexity to the monstrosity that is known as the financial system, instead of going back to very basics where we either are bartering with each other, or we get to a place where the coins in our pockets, like we've talked about before, have real value. Instead, the financial system we live in today has just become a complex monstrosity, which no longer represents, the changing of valuables from one person to the other, right? And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. And again, he says that it has dominated the masses, and it's a mediocre popular occultism, okay? And it's based on the liberal Protestant foundation. And I think in some ways that's right. When you look at some of the different versions of Christianity, each one seems to get more watered down than the next. And it has caught us, again, in this kind of pseudo-scientific realm where people from the highest levels of our government, all throughout the organizations, corporations, and institutions who call themselves rational, who say that they use science and common sense, will also come out and say, but I completely believe in the Bible and all the stories in it, and because of that, we have to support this country over here, and we have to, it's like, wait, what? You can't have both things. You can't say that you are a scientist who lives in a rational world while also saying that you believe in the fairy tale of the Judeo-Christian Islamic, books, right? Those two things, those two worlds do not work together. And then again, when you have that liberal Protestant foundation, we see the churches turning into these liberal monstrosities today. Again, I don't care about the church or whatever it turns into, but the churches of today definitely aren't what they were probably supposed to be. I mean, honestly, who knows? Who cares? The only problem is, and the only reason that we have to care, is because it is still the dominant worldview here in the West. Okay? But during the last several decades, a truly scientific spirit ascended above these depths, opposing the roots of pseudo-scientific worldview, and it has advanced so far that the problem of its own neutralization is becoming acute. But at the moment, when science distorts itself, the way will be clear for an above scientific, that is to say, a magical world view. So again, we can strip away these societal, cultural, and religious wet blankets, which add confusion to what should be a rational and common sense society, right? Instead, we are twisted and mired in our minds and in our hearts with these fairy tales that we know aren't real. We know the things that go on in those books aren't real, yet we still have to try to tell ourselves that they are, and that they should somehow control our daily life and the decisions that we make. And it just doesn't make sense anymore. So let's go on here. It says, the new scientific spirit manifested itself in various scientific disciplines. In the science of history as cultural analysis, in medicine as psychophysiology and psychoanalysis, and in the mathematical natural sciences as theoretical physics and chemistry. Cultural analysis as practiced by Nietzsche, Wohringer, Spengler, Kieserling, and Panwitz, and others. Okay, so those were all authors. I haven't read much of those authors. I read a little bit of Nietzsche. I think he would be an interesting one to kind of follow up. I've seen some of his quotes and read a little bit out of his books. He looks like he goes through, in a more deeper way, a lot of what we talk about here. Again, removing those religious wet blankets that hold down our thoughts and stop us from being able to explore the things that we explore here in the Mind War, right? So those authors taught us the understanding of our own and of foreign cultures in their respective frameworks, and gave us, in contrast to the older science of history, truly above European benchmarks for questions pertaining to different world views, but at the same time foster deep skepticism towards our whole civilization. Okay, so one of the things that's really important there is these authors were able to break out of, that forced, because I think a lot of these, again, were coming out of the dark ages, when a lot of these authors were coming, kind of into our new enlightenment, into this age of Aquarius that we're moving into. And they were able to push against the cultural norms, which are still desperately trying to retain some power today. And we see it changing more and more as, again, the churches are transformed into these far left radical, institutions, or they're just being torn down completely, or a lot of them are being transformed into mosques and just other various forms of again, the Judeo-Christian Islamic paradigm, right? And then we do see some churches being changed into kind of new age religions, which, hey, at least they're trying something new. We'll see. Maybe that'll help. But again, these authors, probably in even more difficult than it is today, were able to break through that societal and cultural norms and say, hey, we're going to do something different because we're looking around and we see our countrymen, living with their head in the clouds in this fairy tale and basing their life and their decisions on it instead of common sense, rationality, natural sciences, life sciences, with, again, just that understanding that we don't know it all. That's where the magic comes in, where we can still have hope for something bigger than ourselves, right? The psychophysiology of Schlick, another author, and others, and the psychoanalysis of Freud initiated a whole new understanding of psychic phenomena and created insights into the essence of soul-body processes, which the conventional orthodox psychology and anthropology would never have been able to give. Again, if your scientific discipline, if the area of scientific study that you're in is so rigorous, if it is so written in stone that it's unable to look outside of its own boundaries, well, you are no longer practicing science, you're practicing religion, right? You've caught yourself within a box of rules and you can't look outside of it. That's the opposite of science. That's more of a religion. So be careful with that, right? It says, goes on here, it says, but the theoretical physics and chemistry with the energetics and new mechanistics of Oswald Mach, Goldschild, Auerbach, Zender, and Mongret. Again, all authors. I haven't studied any of their stuff. Maybe all these guys, again, here on page 56 of the book Magic History Theory Practice, might be a good place to do continued study, right? It says, and many others set a complete overthrow of the pseudo-scientific worldview that is partially still advocated by these thinkers in motion. Okay, so they kind of, these writers, again, like we're doing here, it was an overthrow of the old way of thinking. And that's what we do here in the Mind War podcast. We are overthrowing the kind of government and authority that has had control over our way of thinking for far too long, right? Again, here in the West, it's like everybody has to be a Christian, all of the same, everyone has to fit into the same mold, right? Everyone has to be patriotic. I love patriotism, don't get me wrong, but we're kind of moving out of this idea that everyone has to be forced into the same way of thinking, right? Let's see. Which is not yet fully understood by the scientifically interested crowd. Okay, so again, we're overthrowing the old world view, but is at least suspected with regard to catastrophes as represented by Einstein's theory of relativity. Okay, so let's go on here. It says, for a theory of magic, the results of the neo-mechanicistic come primarily into question, since they principally touch the foundations of our objective world. From here on, we will easily find the way to the psychologic and cultural analytic achievements. Again, folks, I told you these early paragraphs in this theory section, a lot of big words. He's really spelling it all out for us, but eventually it starts to get a little more understandable here. So let's keep going. The pseudo-scientific oriented European believes himself to be surrounded by things which he regards as objective self-contained static quantities. His sensory organs transmit to him the perception of these things, and for him it is only a question of looking accurately enough to form a correct view about them and to not fall for an appearance, a deception. He thereby believes that an accurate view is indeed equivalent to the actual things of the environment. Okay. So, when you go too far down the scientific path, when you go too far down the rational and common sense path, you can get to a point where, again, nothing has any magic to it, right? Life is no longer magical. There is nothing hidden. There's nothing worth searching for. And we don't want to be in that area. We don't want to get so concrete in our thinking that, again, we get stuck into a box, right? We always want to be thinking outside of the box, looking for deeper meaning, looking for that, again, scientists discovered the atom, and then they broke the atom into a bunch of pieces, right? And eventually we'll break those pieces into more pieces, and we will just keep going, okay? But one of the things that it talks here about is when you look at an object, the object itself isn't entirely contained in itself, right? It's affected by everything around it. Everything in our world, every object in our world is currently either growing or decaying. We might look at the things around us and say, oh, they look solid, but everything is currently breaking down. It's constantly in flux. Nothing is just solid, staying in one position, in one state. It's always changing, right? And so we have to understand that, again, these things in our lives, these objects in our lives, they aren't onto themselves. It's all a part of everything that we've done here, right? Sometimes I think of the life that I live, and I'm very grateful for it. I'm very grateful for all the things in my life. And I think of all the people that have worked to create these things. And I am so thankful for all of you who have done that all throughout my life. Everyone who has participated in it. It's really amazing to think. And then when you extrapolate that out to all the things that we've done as individuals and how we have helped and touched the lives of other people, right? This perception was soon weakened by the realization that things are only accessible to us in accordance with our sensory organs, that we would observe the things differently, poorer or richer, if we had other, more numerous or more limited sensory organs. So again, I saw the other day that, the light that our eyes are able to see, the frequency of light that we're able to see, and the frequency of sound that we're able to see is very limited. We can't see in the dark. We can't see heat. We can't see different chemicals flowing through our atmosphere, things like that. So we have a very limited view of, how we feel things. Okay? So someone with less sensory abilities than us has a different view of the objects that we come in contact with than we do. Whereas other animals that maybe have heightened senses, they see things differently than we do. We have to always remember that there are always different versions of all the things in our lives. We're not seeing everything. There's all sorts of hidden stuff around us all the time. How could there still be an equivalent between our mental image and the thing itself? What we observed has always been only fragments. One did console oneself with the fact that fragments are still better than nothing, and also that photography, for example, which describes things without color and plastic, etc., still conveys a sufficiently true view of things, right? And that's so true. We've kind of talked about it with social media. As we absorb and consume so much social media, we think that we know things. We watch someone eat a beautiful cake that they made, and we think that we know what it was like to make it and eat it and taste it, right? But we don't. We only saw it. Maybe we heard what they were doing, but we are missing out on so much of it. Our mind is able to kind of fill in the gaps from the experiences that we had, but we still never experienced that. Same thing with jumping out of an airplane. You can watch somebody do it thousands of times and think to yourself, oh, I kind of know what that might be. But until you've actually done it yourself, you've never experienced it, right? Let's see, we'll go on here. It says, the matter didn't become problematic until one figured out the sham process, which is the depiction of things on the part of our sensory organs. The comparison with the photographic camera is misleading for a long time. One did not take into consideration that the thing which we are seeing and the photography which we are producing about it, the thing, are again only accessible to us through the process of observation, and that therefore the well-established relation between thing and photography did not apply to the process of observation, which remained as the big unknown quantity in an otherwise plausible equation. It was not possible to define the process of observation without again inserting it as an undefined quantity into the definition. Okay, again, this is kind of scientific process stuff where they say if you are observing something happening, just the fact that you're observing it is changing the result of whatever is happening. Okay, that's way deeper than what we're doing here. What we can talk about, though, a little bit, and I think this is important, and this is what plays into the theory of what this magical theory section is going to be about. Okay, so scientifically, you need a couple of things, right? If you're trying to prove something scientifically, it has to be repeatable and you have to verify it. Okay, you have to be able to verify the results over and over again. With magic, okay, the magical practice that we do, right? Low dose THC, low dose psilocybin, listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, getting into a state of somnambulance, that deep state of relaxation or hypnosis, moving then to our altar, or where we're going to perform our ceremonies and our rituals, listening to our hypnotic music, our trance music, keeping us in that trance-like state, doing our breathing and kundalini techniques while we are using techniques like the stare as we stare into the black mirror. When we do these type of things, the feelings that are going to be aroused in you, okay, those are repeatable. You can do this over and over and over again. You can listen to the tapes, take the mushrooms, stare into the mirror, listen to the music, breathwork, kundalini. You can have those physical experiences over and over and over again. This is where magic becomes pseudoscientific, and it's in the verification process. And that's again what we're going to talk about on this theory section on magical theory. Because the rituals and ceremonies that we're going to talk about on the portion where we go through my magical journey over on Instagram at the Occult Technician, those rituals, those ceremonies, that's the repeatable part. I can show you where I went over and over and over again and redid these things week after week, month after month. But when you're doing the practice and you're pushing your manifestations into the black mirror, when you're pushing your desires and your thoughts and the outcomes that you want to have occur, when you're pushing those things into the black mirror, when you're putting them out into the universe, right? You can repeat that process over and over again, but verifying that you have received in abundance what you asked to be manifested. That's the verifiable part, and that's where it becomes much more difficult, okay? Verifying that magic has occurred is the harder part. I think that we can do it through this podcast. I'm going to show you through my journey. Again, in this theory section, I'm going to show you the rituals and the ceremonies that I did. And then as we move into the practice section later on in the podcast, we're going to see the results of it. That's the verifying part. Again, it's not always easy. That's the gray area. But I think some of the things that I've personally done through the practice of magic have been very clear when it comes to verifying those things. I do something specifically, and either within a few days or a few weeks, a result occurs. And it's truly amazing. But that's, again, where the gray area comes in. When you do these things in your life, you might be the only one who truly knows that your magic worked. You may not be able to prove it to anyone else. No one may believe you. But again, we've talked about so much. We don't believe in coincidences here in the Mind War. You know, you did something over here and then something miraculous happens shortly afterwards. I don't know, man. Coincidence or magic? Literally. Is it magic? Are we performing some type of supernatural act that truly is changing our lives, changing our world? That's what we're working on here. All right, so that's it for today. Again, kind of a shorter reading period because we have a lot to cover in the next section, but that was our beginning of the section of the theory section of the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And when we return, we'll continue with my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. So we are going to continue my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician. You can go to my page and you're going to scroll all the way down to a post from August 8th, 2022. And what you're going to see is a picture of my front porch. And you're going to see a picture of a gargoyle. It's it looks like a pit bull, kind of has a chain around his neck with big, giant bat wings. This gargoyle was given to me by my mother and father when I first moved into the house. And it was so sweet. They brought it over, and they brought it out of the back of the truck. And I said, I know exactly where that's going. And I put it right on top of the pedestal on the front porch. And they both were like, oh, my God, that's perfect. It looks so awesome. It really does. It looks great on the for the house there. In the picture in the bottom left, you can see my best friend, Leo, my Boston Terrier, my little buddy. He's down there hiding behind the bars, right? We spent a lot of time sitting on that porch. And now, why is this picture so important? Well, what we're going to talk about today is the practice of a magical technique that we've talked about called the stare. Remember, we talked about the stare from the book A Magic Eye Gallery. We talked about learning the technique in that book. As you stare through an object, we're going to be using that exact same technique while we do our magic. When you look into the black mirror, when you look into the obsidian ball, as you're pulling your tarot cards, you're going to use the stare. You're going to stare through the object, okay? And what we're going to talk about right now is how to practice that, okay? Because you're definitely going to need to do quite a bit of practice before you go in and actually do it during your ceremony and during your ritual, okay? So the first post, we're going to talk about how to practice it. The second post, we're going to talk about using it in the ritual. So we're learning a lot today, but understand, before you do the second half, before you put it into practical work, do the practice first. I spent weeks and weeks and weeks doing what we're about to talk about almost on a daily basis, okay? And it was to strengthen this ability before I went and did it in an actual ceremony. So what are we talking about? Okay. So what you're going to do, and as you can see here on the porch, this was my setup, but you're going to have a setup of your own. You're going to find your own gargoyle, and it can be anything that you want to stare at. It should be some type of object, right? Something, maybe a statue, something like that has meaning to you, okay? So what I would do is, you see a rocking chair in the background. I would sit down on the rocking chair, and I would turn the gargoyle to face me. So now we are looking at each other face to face as I'm sitting in the chair, okay? I take these exact same headphones, my Beats headphones. I put them on, and I would like to, I would find some music that would create emotions in me, okay? This is where you're going to find your own music, whatever's good for you, whatever gets your emotions flowing, right? Any type of song that might, just by listening to it, bring you to tears. The goal that we're trying to do here is harness our emotions. We're trying to get the emotions flowing, right? Instead of sitting there, having them all bundled up and trying to suppress them, or having them lash out in inappropriate times, we're going to keep the emotions flowing, and we're going to process them through this practice, okay? This is an exercise. So for me, my Gemini twins and I, when they were young, we used to watch a movie called Sucker Punch. It's a great movie. Go out and watch it. There was a song in there by a band called LaRue, I believe, and it was called Bulletproof, right? Kind of like a techno song. I found a 6-minute dubstep remix of the song Bulletproof on YouTube. It was 6, maybe 7 minutes long, which is a great length of time to do this. And this song, again, had a lot of build up, right? There was a lot of build up into these crescendos, and then the bass would drop, right? And then it would build up again, and the bass would drop. These are very important, because what's going to happen while you are listening to the music, you are going to be doing your breathing techniques, okay? And the breathing techniques that we're going to do during this process, they're not something where you can just write it down, right? Where you say, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, right? Those techniques are great. But what we're looking for here is to breathe along with the music. Music is so important to our magical aspects because it helps create that flow of emotion. And when you are doing your breathing techniques along with the music, and I can't explain it to you, I can't lay it out for you. Here, breathe at this point and then exhale at this point. It's a feeling. You're going to feel it. You're going to, through the music that you listen to, you're going to know when to take those deep breaths. You're going to know when to hold the breath. You're going to wait till the beat drops and then exhale as that beat drops, boom, 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 right? And you're going to exhale out. And as the song just keeps building the crescendo, maybe you don't breathe in again, so you're kind of holding that exhale, and your mind is starting to, right? It's starting to blur. It's starting to get more, your whole body starts to tingle, right? So what we're doing is we're creating these feelings, these natural feelings, through the use of music. That's the first thing, right? Again, I'm a stoner, so I like to smoke a little bit of weed before I do this, maybe hit the vape pen. Not too much, because again, we're not trying to get into a very deep state of somnambulance while we do this. This is just, again, practice. It's exercise. So I don't do this. I haven't done this while using the psilocybin or anything like that. Again, just an exercise. But the music plays a crucial role. Again, hopefully you're doing this along with your Kundalini practices, right? Your SR, your retention, and all that type of stuff. So not only are you listening to the music, you're going to be doing your breathing techniques. You're going to be doing your Kundalini techniques. So you're going to be refilling your chakras as you move those fluids up into your mind as you're doing your breathing, okay? Now you see me make this motion, right? So what else are we going to be doing while we sit here and listen to this music? Through our breathing techniques, we're going to be creating our resonant energy balloon. We're going to be breathing in through our nose, refilling our chakras, picturing the clean white energy falling down around us, creating our resonant energy balloon as we breathe it back in through our feet, right? We're going to be doing all of this while we are sitting in the chair, while we are listening to the music, the breathing, the Kundalini, and we're going to be doing the stare. We're going to be staring, for me, it's at the gargoyle. We're staring at the statue. Okay. So again, the song that I listen to is a 6-minute version. I'm going to sit and stare at that statue for 6 minutes straight without blinking. Just doing the breathing, just doing the Kundalini, building our resonant energy balloon as we sit and stare. Just thinking about it right now, I can feel the goosebumps that I'm having. This is an amazing form of meditation. This is the opposite of all the other meditation that you've heard where it's clear your mind, calm down. That's important. If you're all psyched up and you're all crazy in your mind and you're having a bad day and all that shit, people are throwing all kinds of garbage at you, maybe you need to clear your mind. Maybe you need to center yourself. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about building ourselves, creating the resonant energy balloon, expanding our energy outside of ourselves, growing stronger, not just in the physical, but in the emotional, in the spiritual, all aspects of it, growing larger and larger. And there are other techniques that you can do while you do this, but we're not going to get into those today. But we're going to take a second here. Another very important piece, journaling, folks. Throughout your magical journey, you are going to journal everything that happens. For me, again, I've told you, I do this technique every 2 weeks. Basically, the full moon and the new moon is when I do my magical practices, right? And I journal on those days. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to journal every fucking day. I mean, if that's something you need to do, do it. So you can reflect back on your day, see where you had successes, where you had failures. Those things are good. But for me, daily was a little too much, so I just started, again, doing every 2 weeks. And so we're going to look into the journal a little bit. This isn't something that we've really done yet. I know there's some people out there who would love to get their hands on this journal, folks. The important part of journaling is someday it will become your grimoire. So I'm going to read here just something I wrote. There was a couple of times that I did this exercise that we're talking about, and here's some of the results. It says, on the porch in the rocking chair, headphones on, turned gargoyle so we are facing each other, eye to eye, steady breathing, focus the eyes, build your resonant energy balloon, push your focus in an intent and purpose out with each breath. Okay, so again, you're breathing in, you're staring at the gargoyle, you're building your resonant energy balloon, and as you exhale through your mouth, you're going to be exhaling your purpose and your intent. Why are you doing this? For me, I was doing this every day, mostly before I went to work. I was building up that resonant energy balloon around me to protect me from all the spiritual nonsense that was going to be thrown at me during my workday, right? So let's see. Here's another time. It says before work, on the porch again, facing the gargoyle, daytime, headphones, basic songs, a few tears, but the gargoyle turned into an owl. Okay, let's keep going here. After work, nighttime, porch, facing the gargoyle, headphones, don't sleep video. We're going to talk about that video shortly. The gargoyle had several forms. Most prominent, the old hag with the long stringy hair, a large bat-like face with wings turned to bat ears, and also a leopard licking his front paw. During the breathing and creating my resonant energy balloon, that's as far as we're going to go on that today, folks. We're not going into that next technique yet. Okay, so what was I just talking about there? This is the beauty. While you are doing all of these things, okay, you're sitting there, you're doing your breathing, you're doing your kundalini, maybe smoked a little bit of weed, you're listening to your music that you know is going to get you into your emotional states, that's going to help your emotions build. You're building your resonant energy balloon. You're using the stare technique to stare through your object. Mine just happens to be a gargoyle. And here's the interesting part. Even sober-minded, again, I like to smoke a little weed like this, but you can do this completely sober. As you're staring at that object over the 6-minute period with this breathing technique, the whole world is going to start to transform. You can do this today. You can stare at the phone. If you're watching this podcast right now on your phone, you stare at your phone without blinking for the next 10 minutes and you tell me what you saw. The world transforms around you. First, it starts in the peripheral. You see things start to shake a little bit. You see things start to get a little bit wavy, right? Some of it is because the tears in your eyes are going to start welling up because you're not blinking, you're staring, right? So a little bit of water forms. So now things start to get a little concave to them. And for me, again, I'm sitting at my porch, so I'm looking at the street in front of me, the houses in the neighborhood. Just down the street, I can see the gas station and the intersection, which is always very busy. There's always a lot of cars going back and forth. So it really starts to get very psychedelic, very hallucinatory. This is a way to, in a sober way, to have hallucinations. You're going to see things when you do this that no one else is seeing, okay? And this is a beautiful way to not fear hallucinations and understand where they come from and take the taboo away from it. We often hear like, oh, people are hallucinating when they take drugs and they're having psychosis and all this type of shit. And it's like, okay, cool. Quit being afraid of them. Hallucinations aren't that bad. In fact, they're pretty fucking awesome. I've loved all the hallucinations I've ever had, right? Whether it was a kid doing LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, or as an adult doing practices like this, I've always enjoyed it. And so one of the things that happened, again, as I'm looking at this gargoyle, the face of the gargoyle would change, okay? Because again, you do this long enough, everything's going to become distorted. And so what is a statue of like a bulldog with bat wings, which is already weird enough, the bulldog's face most often turns into a hag, like a witch type face, kind of old and deteriorating with long stringy hair on each side. Over and over, I would see the statue kind of turn into this. Again, sober-minded, simply with breathing, staring, kundalini techniques, listening to the music, right? Getting those chemicals flowing as you stare, the world starts to the face would change into this hag. In that state of being, when you're seeing this hag appear, you can then do whatever you want. You can ask her questions if you want. You can try to get answers from her if you want. The only thing you can't do is show fear, because there is no fear here in the mind war. Now, on this night, as I continued to do this, as it went deeper and deeper, we saw, again, several forms. That we had the hag turned into a large bat, of course, kind of bat wings. So at some point, it just kind of looked like this giant bat. And then again, at one point, it kind of looked like a leopard, like it was licking its paw. Very strange, right? It's very strange to observe these things in your mind, in your sight, right? But this is the practice. This is the exercise you need to be doing. Because, and it's not just exercise. You're going to be getting something out of this. You're daily going to be strengthening that resonant energy balloon. You're daily going to be strengthening yourself, not just physically, but emotionally. Because again, when you do this with that emotional music, there's a lot of times you're going to be crying. If you listen to more of the angry music, you might be getting your anger into it. Whatever feelings that you want to have, whichever feelings are trapped inside of you that you need to process, this is when you do it. This is a great exercise to process those emotions. So again, you're not just lashing out at somebody who doesn't deserve them. So that was our exercise for practicing the stare. That was our exercise for practicing all the different aspects that go into our ritual practice. And now we're going to go to the next post. And this is from August 12th, 2022. You see that I have my red triangle and I'm using my black mirror. Okay. And so from this night, we'll read here. Okay. Very intense night. Face your demons means to call them with the black mirror. Face them. To put a face on them through the black mirror. Much of what I saw tonight were classic distorted faces from medieval literature. With help from our friends and family, we can all face our demons. Okay. The techniques that we just talked about from the last post, you're now moving them into your ritual. You're now moving them into your ceremony. So on this night, August 12th, 2022, the post that you're looking at with the red triangle and the black mirror, the two candles on each side. That night, psilocybin, THC, listen to the Gateway Experience tapes, found the magical music that I listened to. Again, we'll talk about that in future episodes. Put on the music that I listened to. Again, probably ingested some more THC before going into the ritual. I sat down in front of my altar that was prepared, doing the breath work, doing the Kundalini, using the stare. As I looked through the black mirror, and that's what I saw, facing my demons. What does that mean, and what are you going to see? It's fucking wild. So here's what you're going to do. You take your black mirror and you set it in front of you, and you have to be a few feet away from it. Maybe 4 or 5 feet. You're going to notice when you need to be there. So your black mirror is in front of you on the table. What you're going to do is you're going to set the candles, whether it's 1 or 2 candles, either way is fine. You're going to set the candles behind the black mirror. Okay? It has to be behind the black mirror, because when you do that, the pitch blackness of the black mirror appears. It is so black. When the lighting source is behind it, the black mirror itself just becomes this portal of fucking darkness. It's wild. It's just that simple lighting technique. The candles have to be behind the black mirror. Okay? And so now you are going to be sitting again, maybe 4 feet away from it, 5 feet away from it. And here's why. So the candles are going to light up your face in the mirror. So now you're going to see your reflection of your face in the mirror. Is everybody following along? Okay. The black mirror in front of you, the 2 candles behind it. The 2 candles are lighting up your face, and now you're going to move away from the black mirror until you can barely see your face in the mirror. Okay, this is a magical technique, folks. I hope we're all listening. Okay? Black mirror. 2 candles behind you. You're going to move away from the mirror because the candles are lighting your face until you can barely see your face in the mirror. Just barely see it, right? Then you're going to do the techniques that we just talked about. You're going to stare into that black mirror. And you're going to listen to the music while you're on the psilocybin in your state of somnambulance. You're going to be doing your kundalini in your breath work. You're going to be creating your resonant energy balloon. And as you do this work, and as you do the stare, just like in your exercise on the porch or wherever you do your practice, the world is going to start to shake around you. It's going to start to wobble. It's going to start to dissolve. And in that mirror, the face that you would normally see is going to begin to transform. It's going to begin to change into demons. Your own face is going to look like a demonic monster. Do not be afraid. There is no fear here in the mind war. What I'm telling you is exciting and exhilarating. And most people think, what the fuck, Victor? What are you talking about? This is satanic. This is scary. I can't believe you're doing this. You're turning your face into fucking demons. Yes, because I'm trying to show all of you where these techniques come from. Where these stories, these ancient stories of seeing these demons and all this shit, where did it really come from? It came from this. This is the technique. This is how you do it. It's not some supernatural thing where you're going to do all this and then the demon's just going to appear like in the movies. That's not how it happens. It's more subtle. And when you sit back and you look at yourself in that black mirror, in that state of somnambulance, and you're doing your magical techniques, your face is going to change over and over again. And just like I talked about, it's going to change into an owl. It's going to change into an old hag, maybe into a leopard form. What it looks like and what it reminded me of is the pictures of the demons that we see from medieval art, where they're kind of animal, they're kind of human, they're all mixed together. That's where it comes from. That's where the men who created those images saw these monsters. They looked in the mirror. They faced their demons. Now that we know how to put a face on them, now you can start to work with them. Now you can start to communicate with them if that's what you need. If you do this technique over and over and over again, and that same monster keeps showing up, that same demon keeps showing up in the mirror, ask him, what do you want from me? What am I doing wrong? Why are you tormenting me every day? And what is that torment? What form does the torment come in from the demon? We're talking about reality here, folks. We're not talking about fairy tale. It comes in the form of overeating, right? Greed, lust, the 7 deadly sins, because we know that that's what the demons represent, our human nature. This is an amazing technique. Facing your demons. All of the time you've heard that. All of the time we've heard these ideas, right? No one has ever told you how to practically do it. No one has ever showed you the way. And that's what we just did here. I'm sharing with you the things that I've learned. And that is what I learned. Facing your demons. We know of it as addressing issues in your life. That's absolutely what it is, right? That is the story behind the gory, right? We've talked about that. But we get caught up in the fairy tale, which we just hear, oh, these demons all throughout history, they look like monsters and all this stuff. Well, how? How did they first see them? Where did they come from? This is how. It's from the black mirror. It's from the technique that I just shared with you. That was 2 of 3 posts that we're going to go over today. Those 2 Again, exercise and then practical application. You're going to go out, you're going to find your object, and in a basically clear state of mind, a sober state of mind, maybe smoke a little weed, whatever, you're going to stare at your object while listening to music that is emotionally driven for you. You're going to do your breathing, your kundalini, create your resonant energy balloon, doing the stare, and you're going to practice. Your world's going to change, and it's going to feel amazing. And then you're going to take those exercises, what you've learned, the strength that you've built through doing that over and over again. You're now going to put it into your real ritual, your ceremony, and you're going to face your demons in that black mirror. No one has taught you that before. No one has shared the information that I just shared with you on how to do this. No one. No occultist, no esoteric teacher out there on the internet anywhere, no Aleister Crowley nonsense. None of those people have ever laid it out in detail how to face your demons the way that I just did. That's what we're doing here in the Mind War. That's what it means to be the occult technician. I'm taking these hidden things, I'm breaking them down into their most fundamental pieces, and then I'm sharing with you what I learned and basically the instructions on how to do it. Do with it what you will. I can't wait to hear what you see in the black mirror. Next post. It's from August 28th, 2022, and it's titled Shax, S-H-A-X. I think I've talked about this one a little bit. This was a fun post here. It was those early days when I was doing the very early kind of blood offerings to Shax. And one thing I learned from Shax is that he speaks in a hoarse voice, but he does it subtly. And so what did he tell me? What did I learn from Shax during this night? Now, let me see if I can find it here. Okay, sorry about the break there, folks, but I found it here. Okay, it says, my time with Shax here. So we're going to get into, in future episodes here, we're going to talk about the project I was working on at the time. But when I was working with Shax, S-H-A-X, I was still building the art that you see in front of me, the art that you see behind me. I was still in the building phase of this art project, all the physical art that I was making. And it says this, it says, Shax spoke loudly. I asked him to help me deal with negative thoughts and daydreams. Okay. This is how this works, okay? When you ask these spirits, for me, demonic spirits, whatever spirits you want to talk to, whatever it is, doesn't matter. When you ask them questions, they're going to answer you, but it's not always in the form that you might think it's coming, that's going to come in, right? And here's what I asked. I asked to help me deal with negative thoughts and daydreams. All of you have them. Those negative thoughts that are constantly popping into your mind. Negative scenarios that would never occur. But for some reason, you find yourself staring off into the distance in a state of somnambulance as you do the stare. You already know the technique. It's built into you. You do it all the time. You're staring off and you're imagining something horrible happening to you in your life and you don't know why. And then you have to snap yourself out of it. Oh, why was I even thinking about that? Why was I thinking about this awful event occurring in my life? Why was I playing it over and over and over in my mind? Why? Why do we do this? Is it an ingrained human nature, or is it a societal, cultural, and political wet blanket that has been taught to us? I think maybe that's what it is. I think maybe our culture teaches us to have these negative thoughts over and over again. And so I said to Shax, please help me clear these negative thoughts and emotions that I was having. And here's what happened. So while I was working on my art projects, I've told this story before, I should have been focusing on what I was doing, right? Focusing on the wood, focusing on the paint, focusing on the stain, whatever it was that I was doing, sanding, cutting, whatever piece that I was doing, instead of focusing on it with gratitude for what I was doing, with a thankful heart and a thankful mind that I had the ability and the opportunity to sit and do this art project calmly by myself, right? Instead, I'm thinking about all the people that worked at the library that I hated. Instead, I was thinking about all the torment and nonsense that I went through on a daily basis at a job that I hated. So instead of being in the moment and appreciating the opportunity that I was given to do this art and to build it, I'm having all these negative thoughts about a place that I hate. Why? Why do we do that? And that's what I asked Shax. I said, please help me focus, man. And he did. He spoke very hoarsely, very coarsely, but in a subtle way. And what happened is during my time working on that project, 3 separate times, and sometimes you got to be taught the same lesson 3 fucking times before you learn, folks. 3 times while working on these art projects, including projects like the one you see in front of me, this wooden triangle, right? 3 times I stood up and hit my head right in the same fucking spot, right on the spot where I had skin cancer removed when I was like in my mid-20s. There's a nice scar up here. 3 times I hit myself in the same spot on the corner of one of these triangles. And it fucking hurt, folks. And the 3rd time it bled and I had blood running down my forehead. And all 3 of those times, instead of focusing on the work that I was doing, I was having negative thoughts and daydreams about working at the library, a place that I fucking hate, right? And Shocks reminded me over and over and over again, clear your fucking mind. Enjoy what you're doing. Focus on what you're doing. Why are you having these negative thoughts? And when I did, I would stand up, boom, right in the fucking forehead. This is what it means to work with these type of spirits, and this is how they're going to communicate with you. They're not going to write things down in a list and tell you ABC 1, 2, 3. That's not how it works. You're not going to ask for $1 million and then it just gets delivered to you in the form of a check the next day. That's not how it works. You have to ask questions that you truly want answers for. And when you do, those answers will be provided. But you have to look for that form. How are they communicating with you? And for me, Shax communicated to me very loudly, with a hoarse voice, with a coarse voice, saying, focus on what you're fucking doing, dude. Because if you don't, you're going to get hurt, right? It's beautiful, man. It's not something to fear. It's going to be different for all of us. Your questions will be different than mine, and the responses you get will come in a form that's different than mine. But the reason that I share this story is so you understand how the communication works, how the communion works. It's not like in the movies. It's not like in the memes and the pictures we see of wizards, pulling demons out of the cauldron and stuff. Sure, you can see that if you need to. But what I'm talking to you about is practical, day-to-day, small incremental changes that we make to our aristos through the use of magic. I appreciate you being here, and as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts, and open your minds, because this is Mind War.